Good morning. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means. The Saturday Morning Hustle Podcast. Outworking the competition while they still sleep. Each and every Saturday, we're in the office because we're the hustlers, we're the grinders, we're the people who make it happen. Decision makers and real baller AF folk. Today, we're going to talk about focusing on detail, attention to detail, and how it benefits and finally it completes the conversion process from a potential audience to a potential customer to a consumer through the transaction and repeatable business, because that's ultimately where you want to get to. The best thing in the world for any business is repeatable business. And then even one step further, being brand evangelists, etc. All of that hinges on the small stuff, the details. You have the big picture item put together. You've done the work. You've done the big amount of work. Now don't screw it up by letting the smallest details slide because you don't think they're important. They're actually much more important than the big stuff. It's easy to have your storefront. It's easy to have your e-commerce website. It's easy to have your mobile app. It's easy to have your office or your manufacturing facility. It's easy to hire people and to put them in a place to do what you do because that's your business model, because that's what's expected, because that's where you start. Where you have the most potential to fail are not the big obvious items. It's the small things. It's the little things that the consumer, your audience, your potential transaction partner loses confidence in you and loses the idea that you care for them or have their best interest at heart when you let this small stuff slide. If you're not willing to do the execution all the way through the smallest detail with the same amount of focus and effort that you put to the big items, then you lose the consumer. And not only do you lose them at the point of conversion where you're about to make the transaction, you've sold them, and then you're going to try to create repeatable business. So you go from the best case scenario to the worst case scenario if you fail to get the small stuff right, attention to detail. So think about it. You've gotten the attention of your potential consumer, your target audience. You've reached them with some sort of message. You have communicated to them in the way they want to be communicated to, your value proposition, your differentiation, what it is about your product or service that is interesting to them to a point that they have investigated. You have communicated with them, you have educated them, you have now gotten them to the conversion process. All you have to do is execute on that conversion, and this is where typically the attention to detail comes into play. Little things about how the conversion process happens, how they check out, how they pay, how they get their receipt. What is there a warranty? Is it a one-time thing or is it a continual operation? Something as simple as when you get to the restaurant and you get all the way to dessert, and if they screw up on dessert because they don't ask you if you want to have dessert, or they don't bring the right accoutrements, or they don't take care of you all the way through the process, leaves, sorry for the bad pun, a sour taste in your mouth because they don't pay attention to those details that you expect from them. And again, you've created a trust opportunity. You have got them to give their trust to you. You've got them to give you their attention, and then their intention. They're ready for the transaction. And if you make it easy, the transaction will go through. And if you make it hard, difficult, too many steps, or not enough attention to detail on your point, then you make it more difficult for them. They potentially don't want to go through the transaction. They might even go through it begrudgingly and come out the other side with buyer's remorse, which is the absolute worst thing you want to do. Because what you want to happen, now that you have done the big hard stuff, you have started with trying to reach out to the masses, you've gotten down from the masses to your potential target audience, you've sent them messaging, you've connected with them, you've created this trust and understanding of what your value proposition is. It's conversion time. You're ready to go. The potential now for a great conversion, a great transaction, and then the potential for them to be a repeat business customer. Sorry that I stepped all over that, but let me say it again. Repeat customer is super high if the big stuff led to the small stuff, led down to the detail, and you handled yourself with success in the detail at this level. If you do that, the likelihood of a repeat transaction, providing that your product or service is of the quality that of the expectation that you set out, you've met every expectation, the idea that they would come back to you is very high. And now the second time and the third time and the fifth time and the 100th time that they spend money with you, it is a more profitable proposition for you because you're not spending money on marketing to bring them in. You're simply keeping front of mind with them because they've already have transactions in the past that let them know they want to have a future transaction. Repeat business is the best business. Repeat business is fantastic. It's the least amount of cost and effort for you to make it happen, and that creates the highest profit margin for you as well. So the key is not simply transactions. The key is conversions that are repeatable. One more time, because it's that important. Conversions that are repeatable is the key. That's the goal. That's what you're trying to accomplish. You can't do that if you let the details get in the way, the small things that they, as the consumer, as the customer, as the person giving you their money and offering their trust up to you, they expect you to operate at 100% all the way through the process. If you fall down on the details, it's worse than falling down on the big things. And let me explain why. Because the big expected items are easy. Everyone sees they have to do that. You have to create a product that is of quality. You have to be on time. You have to have service that lives up to the expectation you create. That is the easy part because that's the process of doing business. The small stuff and the small details that can get you in trouble, lose a transaction, lose a potential customer, lose a potential repeat customer, are often very small things that take very little effort and little to no money. Think about that. Little effort, little to no money to cover these details. All you have to do is care enough and invest yourself enough in your consumer's relationship and put yourself in their place. Literally think like the consumer, act like the consumer, stand in the line they need to stand in to pay or to pick up their product or where they come in and meet you for your service offering. Is it a comfortable situation? Is it clean? Is it safe? Does it make sense? Does it feel intuitive? Are all the things there that they need? Do they need ink pens? Do they need iPads? Do they need Wi-Fi? Do they need all of these other things? Have you provided the opportunity for that to happen? And if you haven't, why not? And if you obviously could have and should have and simply don't, you're now eroding that trust of the transaction that you've already built up, and you make your potential consumer and that, again, potential repeat consumer lose faith in the idea that you care about them and their half of the transaction. They lose trust in you because you're not willing to put that little bit of extra effort in to make the transaction smooth and repeatable by paying attention to detail. If you don't care enough to make sure your facility is clean, to make sure that everything is stocked, that something that can happen in 5 steps doesn't happen in 10, that you're always examining your processes, you're always training your employees, you're always looking at everything you do as ways to make it better and looking at improvement. If you're not willing to do those things, then the consumer has the potential to say, well, maybe you're not willing to be a good partner for me and I won't do business with you. Even if I do business with you this time, I'll find a reason not to do business with you in the future. You absolutely want to avoid the find a reason to not do business with you in the future by covering the details, attention to the details, the small stuff, sweat the small stuff, and prove that you are trying your best to earn their business, to earn their trust, to earn their respect, and create a opportunity that is repeatable. If you can do that, if you will pay attention to the small stuff, and again, it's not big energy items. It's not having to put a fresh coat of paint on a new building, but it is keeping it clean. It's not about having the most impressive piece of technology at the checkout stand, but it has to be something that works consistently, quickly, and without too much effort, as it is in other places where these same consumers have transactions. If doing business with you is more difficult than doing business with someone similar to you, or even worse, your competitors, the competition, then you are driving your audience straight to those competitors. So take every opportunity to look at your transaction process, look at your conversion process, look at the sales process, look at your marketing, look at how you would try to attract them from the front to back, and find all of the small places, low energy, low cost, no cost, that you can make better simply because it's good for the consumer, not because it's good for you. Not because it makes your job easier, but because it makes it better, smoother, faster, better to trust, an ultimately better relationship for the consumer, not for you. Put it for them first, take care of those details, attention to detail, show them that you're willing to do what it takes to earn their business, and you have a high possibility of earning it the first time, the second time, the fifth time, and the 100th time. That is the whole process. Think like the consumer, show them that you're willing to put in the effort, earn their business, and then create a repeatable process. If you can do that, your business can and will be successful. And if you're thinking, maybe I don't own a business, maybe I work in a business, or I'm trying to build my own career. Again, your attention to detail, being able to look at things, think of the consumer, fix it or adapt it or adjust it before it is a drag on the consumer. If you have a boss, your boss will appreciate that. If your boss is a boss's boss, that boss will appreciate it as well. When you think about your own self, your career, what you're working on, anything that you're trying to achieve, you get the big picture. You start with, we have to, if you're in a band, you got to write a song. It's easy to start writing a song, but down to how do we make sure that this gets converted to MP3 correctly? If you're an artist, it's easy to say, I got to get a canvas and paint and get going, but how are you going to transport that piece of art? How are you going to protect it? Is that paint going to last 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years? Think about the details and put yourself in the consumer's position. And then you have the opportunity to create transactions and opportunities that create future opportunities and transactions. I'm going to tell you a story here real quick with the last couple of minutes that we have here on the podcast today. This was brought up, the idea of details, because I had a very bad transaction go very, very bad because, and I've learned some different things since it happened, but at the time it was happening, it seemed that they simply had forgotten some details. I ordered something online. I went to pick it up. The store was closed. Locked up, no one there. I assumed something had happened that forced them to close, or it was a planned closure. Either way, they didn't pay attention to detail enough to not allow online transactions on their website. That was what I saw. That's what I knew. And all I really knew out of the situation was they had taken my money and was unable to deliver the product in the time frame as expected. And it wasn't something that could be delivered the next day or something like that. It was timely, it was specific, and they failed to do so, which made me think that they didn't care if they took my money and didn't give me my product, that they simply were running their business as minimally as possible. And so not only did I not want to not complete that transaction, but I sure as the heck don't want to ever go there in the future again. Now, it turns out they had a little bit of an employee mutiny. It was a little bit more complex than I originally thought. But even then, once the people who where the corporate folks, if you will, who were in a different state, found out that the employees were not working as expected, still didn't do the process enough of reaching out to people like myself who had transactions online who were unable, and I had called and emailed and I'd made myself available. It took them 2 days to get back to me. Again, lack of detail. I didn't want to hear whatever excuse they had for me, whatever the reason they had for me, because the detail of taking 48 hours was enough for me to realize that they didn't have my best interest at heart. They were taking care of themselves first and the consumer, myself, secondly. So I already have the attitude. I didn't want to complete the transaction. I don't want to be repeatable in the business. And if someone were to ask me if they should do business with them, I will tell them no. So absolutely not becoming a brand evangelist. In fact, becoming a brand detractor and ultimately potentially affecting their brand reputation again, because they had one bad day at their business, but they were very, very, very bad at how they handled it during, how they handled it afterwards, taking responsibility and holding the consumer as the most important aspect in the conversation. They almost seem like it was work for them to have to speak to me, even though they took my money and did not provide me products or service, essentially stole my money. Now, in the long run, got my money back. Ironically, when they run your credit card, they get your money within 15 seconds, and somehow it takes 4 to 7 days to give it back to you. It's a whole different scenario, so we won't even talk about that. But I had me thinking about the fact that if their store was closed, but their website was available to do online transaction, the simplest idea of, did we think about the online aspect? Did we put something different on the message on our phone? Did we put out something on our social media? Did we change something about our website? Have we done enough to communicate to our audience, consumers and potential consumers, that the situation has changed, even if it was temporary? And the answer is no. They did none of those things. And so as I looked through this, trying to find a way to contact someone, explain my situation, get my refund, and move on, but realizing at every turn that they were not taking any of the opportunities to pay attention to detail and go above and beyond for consumers. So that's how I got to our lesson today on this Saturday morning hustle. The attention to detail will get you far and could screw you up really quickly. So thank you for listening today. Thank you for taking time to tune into the Saturday Morning Hustle podcast. Here, Saturday, we're in the office. We're hustling and grinding while the competition is still sleeping. Of course, you can check out the full-length podcast each and every week. iTunes, Spotify, the Anchor app, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Podchaser, YouTube, wherever you find great podcasts. All the links to anything I'm talking about is in the description below, and all our social media links as well. So check it out on social media. Go and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Leave a review, leave a comment, give a like, the thumbs up, the heart, however it is, any way you can, and let me know what you think about today's episode. If you think I got it right, if you think I got it wrong, if you think I missed some details, let me know. Make a comment on social media. I will update you on social media and probably do a future podcast on that topic as well. So until then, get yourself a Saturday Morning Hustle swag, Entrepreneur AF, and coffee and donut swag as well at the Saturday Morning Hustle store. The links are on all our social media and, of course, SaturdayMorningHustle.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we now have a new Facebook page. So go to Facebook and just type in one word, Saturday Morning Hustle. You'll find my silly face with one of those cool t-shirts on. Make sure you like us on Facebook so you get the post, you get the updates, you know when the episode is out each and every Saturday. And when in doubt, go to SaturdayMorningHustle.com. I'll see you next week.
Saturday Morning Hustle. Saturday Morning Hustle. Saturday Morning Hustle. Wake up and keep chasing your dreams.